thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from the evil one. For thine is the kingdom, the power. Peace be with you, Mary, full of grace.
Our Lord is with you, blessed art thou among women, blessed the fruit of thy womb, our Lord Jesus Christ. O Virgin Saint Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners now and at our time and at the hour of our death. Amen.
O gracious God, once again we bow our hearts before you, for your guidance and for your grace. The project that we is going to start. Send your wisdom upon the architectural company, Mr. Jack and his associates. And Lord, provide your grace and your concern when we are trying to build a house for you. And we believe that your presence will be there, and your grace and your mercy will be there to start up this project and finish this project through your grace and your mercy. And we pray all in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Thank you, Ajahn. So, good morning to everyone. I think I still have 9 minutes before it switches over to the afternoon. And welcome to our first town hall for the Church and Hall Construction Project. My name is Ashley, and I'm one of the leads for this project, and I'm specifically leading the construction group. As you guys all know, the pandemic has taken a toll on us, and we've been on hold for the past 13 months. So, through your thoughts and prayers and convictions, we have been able to restart this effort in May of 2021. We have also increased our communication to ensure visibility to the entire congregation via the email updates you've been receiving, as well as a recurring newsletter that will be sent out not too long from now. With the General Body approved partnership this year between St. Gregorios and Blue Line, we have entered into the first phase out of 3, which is called the Discovery Phase. And some of you may know it as the Schematic Design Phase. Here with us today is Jack Duran, Vice President of the Blue Line Group, Architecture Group. He'll be walking us through some of the details associated with his organization, his experience, the opportunities that actually lie in front of us, and more specifically, the results of the survey that his team provided to us over the last month. The project committee has diligently developed a project plan where we have intended for all the church inputs that we are going to gather through various mechanisms, including the completed survey, the town halls that we have today, and another one as well upcoming next month, and then the meetings with the spiritual organizations. By actively participating in these sessions, you, those who are in person, those who are online, and those who are with us in spirit, you have the opportunity to directly impact and provide feedback that can impact the designs of this project. All the feedback will be collected and will be supplemented with the recommendation of the architecture firm as well as the project committee. And this will eventually be submitted to the general body for a final decision approval and next step alignment. We're aiming for this general body to be in the 3rd quarter of this year, so stay tuned for that, for the exact date. The project becomes a successful reality through the inclusion and collaboration of each and every one of us from the beginning. So again, we're gathered here today to embark on this long journey, but we want to do it together as a congregation. We ask for your continued prayers, support, and participation as we plan ahead for the future of our church, for our kids, as the seniors have done for us. Please feel free to reach out to myself or any project committee member if you have any questions or concerns. We anticipate today to be no more than about an hour, and with that said, I'd like to hand over the mic to Jack to begin this town hall.
Thank you very much. I assume everybody can hear me. Again, my name is Jack Duran. I'm here representing Blue Line Architecture Firm. We've been in business for over 35 years. And And the majority of our work is religious and nonprofit. That's we do a lot of. And I wanted to share with you a little bit of that, our experience today. The agenda that we're going to. The agenda. Can you hold it in the middle? Okay. The agenda we're going to talk about today is first we're going to start, that was the introduction, a little bit about our firm, the purpose of why we're here today, and then specifically we want to talk about the survey that everyone participated in. It's a very important part of this, the findings, and then the next steps. Oops. Just wanted to talk to you about a few of our projects that we've done. This is Notre Dame Catholic Church. It's over in the A-Leaf area. It's a 1,100 seat worship center, and we did that a few years back. It's a fairly large church, had some administrative functions and other things like that. It was well over 20,000 square feet total. And you can see that it was just under $6 million. Oops. This is another project we finished just a few years ago. Again, 13,000 square feet. This is Our Lady of Guadalupe in Rosenberg, and that was just under $4 million. That particular project. All these projects have won awards. The one that you just saw there was one that we received it. St. Edward's Catholic Church. This is up in Spring, Texas. It's a fairly large church, 1,200 seat. Its overflow has another 400, and we finished that a few years back, and that was again one that was just under $4 million. This is Wildwood United Methodist up in Magnolia. This one is a 400-seat worship center, but there were a lot more components to the project, almost 20,000 square feet. And the total project cost on this one was $3.4 million. This is one up in Katy area, Grand Lakes Presbyterian. This is another one. This is a 450-seat worship center. This one had a total square footage of right at 13,000 square feet, just over 13,000 square feet, and just under $3 million total budget. And then the final one is Seabrook United Methodist Church. It's up in Seabrook, Texas. This was a fairly large 1,200 square foot. The worship center itself is 400 seats. And the total project budget on that one, it had, again, all these projects have classrooms, education. This one was $2.2 million. Just to give you an idea of construction costs and some of the aesthetics that those churches had. Now I want to talk to you a little bit about our process. We're in the discovery phase. As I actually said, there's three phases. There's discovery, which is schematic design in historic architectural processes. The next one we call is design, which is design development in the architectural AIA contract, and its construction documents. That's the detailed drawings that go to the city or the county, whoever's reviewing it for permit. And then the final stage is delivery. That's the construction. So we're early in the process, and that's why we asked you all to participate in this survey. And that's the first phase of this whole thing. Ultimately, what we're trying to get to is this right here, the conceptual design. That's the result of, that's at the end of the discovery process, we're going to have that conceptual design turn into a schematic design, which is what we want to build in the next phase here on this campus. And so the process we're going through is to figure out how much can we build possibly on this particular piece of property, and what do we need to build on this piece of property. And so, again, the discovery phase, the deliverables that we'll have the master plan will have detailed floor plans, which you see there with rooms and square footages and all those components. We'll also have 3D models, so we'll be able to fly around the building and fly into the building to see what it feels like and looks like. And then we'll have overall budget, not just for the construction, but the overall project, because we want to make sure we're tracking fixture, furniture, and equipment, and all the stuff that goes along with it. And then we'll have interior renderings like this that you see. And then finally, we'll have the project schedule, which is not only the design, this discovery schedule, but how long it'll take to get through the other phases, including construction. So we're going to have a better idea as to what, when you could potentially occupy a building realistically. This is the important part that we want to talk about today, which is the survey results. The survey results are very important because, again, it's where you all get to participate, and we get to hear what you say, and everybody gets to have a vote essentially. And ultimately, when you have a vote, not everybody gets what they want, but what you want to look at for the majority, what's best for the church, not just me personally, but what's best for the church, and that's what we're looking at here. And I just wanted to point out, for a church your size, to have 103 respondents is outstanding. We typically, at a church your size, we figure it's probably on the conservative side, somewhere maybe a third, maybe a little bit more, that are part of that 103. For us to get 10 to 15% at most churches is considered very good. So for you to be at 103 people who are interested in what is happening here on this campus, that's outstanding. So with that, we'll start. Everybody remembers the questions. We'll go ahead and review those. The first question was, rank a priority those facilities that most needed at this time. To summarize that, the facilities needed at this time are a new worship space, parking, and a multi-purpose hall. Those were the three primary concerns that the majority of people wanted to see in a new building. The next question was, rank in priority order those facility components that you think will be most needed in 10 years. Again, it came out the same thing. Worship space, parking, and then multi-purpose hall. So the space is needed, felt by most people, is needed on campus for those components. What is the adequacy of the following items? And you can see down here, not adequate are all the blue. The exterior items that are viewed as not adequate are parking, drop-off, and lighting. Everybody felt those were the concerns that need to be addressed in any new construction that we might do. The fourth question we asked is, what is the single best physical asset among the existing facilities at your church? Again, this is where people wrote in, and there were 59 responses to the question. In no particular order, the quality of the worship center is the biggest asset that people felt needed to be your existing facility. This is the biggest asset you have on the campus. What is the single most glaring deficiency is the next question among the existing facilities on the campus. And clearly, parking and space. There's not enough space. That's a theme that's carried throughout the survey that we've come across. The sixth question was, are there any existing structures, facilities, elements, etc. that are sacred? The majority of people said that no, there's not any particular building component that is necessarily sacred or has to stay. But to clarify that a little bit more, the majority of people believe that the altar is a very important part of the church that needs to be thought about in any new building. And so that kind of reflects what we just saw in the previous slide. Question 7, would you be willing to see some existing building structure or other site features demolished or repurposed? And you can see there, almost 80%, which echoes what we saw in the previous two slides. The majority of people see that there's really nothing on campus that could not be replaced with a new building. And this goes to show of all the items that you have on campus, everybody felt the hall was the one that was most expendable. It could probably come out and be and something in its place as opposed to taking down the church. Question 8, your church property has many trees. What percentage of large trees would you be willing to sacrifice? And a little over 50% said that they didn't really want the trees to dictate where a building is located. You know, if a tree needed to be sacrificed, then most people would be okay with that. When we go through our process, we'll make sure that we try to keep, if there are any trees that come into conflict with the planting, we'll make sure that we try to preserve any, if not all of them. And if we do have to sacrifice one or two, then we'll make everyone clearly aware of that fact. But again, our goal is to preserve as much as you have as possible. Question 9, in general, what is the adequacy of the existing structures on the site? And again, you can see here, the blue represents not adequate. And you can see the blue bars are fairly extensive. The consensus of the majority of the existing buildings are on the site are not adequate is the overall sentiment there. Question 10, please list your degree of preference for each of the following architectural symbols. And we gave a listing of them, and the one that stood out the most is the cross. The people in this body of church want an outsider driving by or coming onto the property to understand that the cross represents the church, and this is a church property. So that's a very strong sentiment there. Which exterior type of architectural character do you believe best expresses your church community? And we had given a sample visuals of what those might be. A very traditional, and then 2 transitionals, and then a contemporary. Clearly, the transitional was the highest between the 2, and then the traditional. So I think any new design needs to take in some traditional and some transitional elements in it. So that'll be our responsibility to make sure that we're hitting all those keys as we design. Most people just don't want anything real contemporary, as you can see there. Question 12, which exterior material do you prefer for your facility? And clearly the highest ones were brick and stone, which I think we can do something very nicely with that. So we agree with that. And any new structures, do you prefer to maintain the architectural theme of the existing buildings, or would you wish to see something new? In other words, do you want your buildings to look like these, or would you rather see something possibly a little bit different? And based on the last slide we saw, people want a little bit more transitional to traditional architectural style. So again, most people want to see something new. The next question was, how large should your sanctuary be in 10 years from now? The majority of people felt it needed to be at least 1.5 to double the size. The majority would double, but you add those 2 together, and that's those 2 right there. So anywhere between 1.5 to at least double the size of your current sanctuary is what we're hearing. Should a font communion rail be included? And clearly, the majority said yes, it needed to be included. So that'll help direct the design effort there. In the worship space, how prominent should the following elements be? And we gave a listing of them: the relics, stained glass. The ones that came up the highest were the relics, stained glass, and then sanctuary the view from the sanctuary to the sanctuary from the lobby. Those were the highest priorities right there. Again, that'll be reflected in new design that we develop. Question 12, assume that your church has facilities that could accommodate the activities indicated below. Would you want your fellowship spaces to be used for these? And we gave, again, a listing. The majority of people felt that any new fellowship needed to be really gathering and meetings. There wasn't a strong for the other components, but the majority felt that meeting spaces were the priorities there. Which of the following would be the best method for serving meals at the church members? And the one that was the highest by far was a warming kitchen. Not necessarily a full-blown commercial kitchen. That really wasn't what's asked for here. It's really just a warming kitchen where you cater, you bring in food, and you keep it warm while it's being served. So that would be the priority there. Question 20. Please indicate your preferences for including or not including the following components. And we've given a series of options. And the highest current need was a larger church, parking, and then gathering space, which is identical to the very first two slides we saw. Everybody wants a new church. They prefer new basically better parking, more parking, and then more gathering space. So there's a strong consistency throughout this survey. Please indicate your age group. Again, there's a nice cross-section of ages. The majority are 30 to 45s, but in terms of an overall curve, it's the people who participated in this survey is a good distribution of age groups, which is very encouraging. The 22nd question, please indicate the number of at-home adult family members living in your residence. Again, you can see 2 to 3 adults, so that indicates a strong family presence, which I'm sure you all are aware of. So that's very important. And then this next question was, and follow up on that one was, please indicate the number of at-home children, family members, younger than 18 children, basically, essentially. There's an even split of people who have children and people who don't have children, which is a healthy component to have in any church. So I commend you for that. Please indicate how long you've been a member of St. Gregorius. Over 84% of the respondents have been members for over 10 years. You add these two together, that's over 10 years. Over half have been members for over 20 years. So those are very good and very strong numbers, which I'm sure you all know that already. Knowing your congregation, what would you consider a reasonable and achievable budget? The majority, 81%, felt it was anywhere from 1 to 5 million as an overall budget number that we should be considering. 25% felt that it was between 3 and 5 million, just to give you an indication there. This is probably a very important question that was asked. How many people would be willing to contribute additional funds to this project over and above what you give in terms of offering? Over 50% of respondents plan to contribute additional funds for this project, which is, again, it's a very high number given a lot of the churches we do. There's a strong desire to see this body continuing to grow, which is a very encouraging thing, I'm sure, for all of y'all. Question 27, what do you believe will be the most important issue facing your congregation at this time? 63%, these were where people basically commented, and there was a strong percentage in various areas. 63% of the comments expressed the need for a new worship center in the meeting space. 20% of the comments specifically mentioned working towards unity as a church. 11% of the comments mentioned finance as being one of the most important. And then the final one, do nothing. 5% felt that there was centered around not doing anything. So clearly, some work to be done. Question 28, what do you believe will be the most important issue facing your congregation in about 10 years? Again, it goes back to space, needing additional space. people felt, or 68% of the people felt that way. 13% felt that attracting new members was probably going to be, over the next 10 years, one of the most important issues. 12% felt accommodations for children and youth was the most important. Again, going back to space. And then 3% mentioned financial issues over the next 10 years. Question 79. One thing the project committee could do better. 37% felt the project needed to move forward, push forward with the building project. That's what the focus needed to be. 33% felt that communication of information to the church body could be improved. 12% of the committee, 12% of the comments said that they're doing a good job. 7% addressed financial issues again, and again, 3% in this particular setting, do nothing, just wait. Those were all the questions that were asked in the survey. So at this point, I'll throw it up into questions. So do you want to do that now? Ashley, does anybody have any questions? Or I know I went through the slides. There's a lot there. But there was a consistent theme throughout, as you can see. There's a strong desire, it seems to be, to advance at least the discovery phase, the planning phase, to figure out what it is that could be built on this property, and specifically what needs to be built. And that's one of the things. I'm going to go to the next slide. The next steps that we'll be talking about are, we'll be meeting with the different spiritual groups, but we'll also be meeting with others to develop a program of needs. Now that we know, based on the survey, what spaces everybody thinks are needed on campus, now we'll start talking about what do those spaces need to look like, and what needs to be included in those components, and then sometime in the near future, we'll be coming back to you all with what those various options are and what option we basically honed in on as the one that the church maybe feels that needs to be pursued. So with that, I'll throw it back up to anybody have any questions on the survey.
And I'll say, if anyone has questions, please wait for Vincent or myself to bring you a microphone so we can get it.
There was on one of the slides, there was about the preferred budget. Could we go back to that slide? Okay, it says 1 to 3 million seem to be the most.
That's correct.
Okay.
That was basically over 55%, or right at 55%, felt that that was the most achievable. Again, this one here was 25%, and basically, I looked at adding those two as basically the 25% plus the 50%. So you were 55% plus 25% with the 80%. But then,
no, it goes between 80% of respondents believe between 1 to 5 million. Okay, I see. That was the first question.
Yeah.
My second question was on the models that you showed. Could you kind of right at the beginning? No, actually the different churches that you've done. I just wanted to know, what you did at each church. Those different 5 or 6 projects that the pictures.
Oh yes. What about them?
Like what was included in each project? Because you mentioned that all of them included more than just a church. So
Yes.
I just wanted to understand what each project included.
Yeah. This particular one was a new worship center. This one happened right after Katrina. Their entire campus was lost. It was 9 feet underwater. So from the day of Katrina, the original date that the hurricane happened, 1 year later to the day, was the day we had the dedication of this church. So we designed it and built it in a year. This was a 400 seat worship center. We had education classes. The total square footage was 12,000 square feet. Of that, about 5,000 was worship. The rest of it was classrooms, daycare, and administrative offices. And then there were adult classrooms also. This particular one, this was a 450-seat worship center. This one had 2-story. They had classrooms above, they had classrooms on the lower level, and then they had the worship center. Again, it was classrooms, and again, administration was in there too, offices. This particular one, very similar to the last one. You can see this one was 19,000 square feet. Roughly about 5,000 square foot of this was the worship center. Everything else was classrooms and administrative spaces. And I'm sorry, this one had a gymnasium to it. This one had a large multi-purpose gymnasium with classrooms. The gymnasium was about 7,000 square feet. The worship center was about 5,000 square feet. And then the balance was classrooms. This is St. Edward's Catholic Church. This is a large 1,200 seat worship center. This is mostly just church. There's behind the church, you see back here, there's a day chapel that seats about 100. And then this is a 1,200 seat worship center that's expandable to 18. But this is all church, that whole square footage that you see there. Well, it doesn't have square footage, but that was all the church component. And parking and sidewalk, all that sort of stuff. This is Our Lady of Guadalupe. This is in Roseburg. This is let's see, this one is 600 seat worship center but it's expandable to 800. You can get another 200 people in there. It's 13,000 square feet. Again, this one has a chapel also that seats about 100, and it also has administrative space. There's no classrooms in this building. And then Notre Dame Catholic Church. This one is another 20,000 square feet. This one is another 1,200 seat worship, 1,100 seat worship center. This one is expandable to another 400, so you get 1,500 people in this church. And it has a chapel also that seats about 100. And then it also has administrative space. But again, the majority of this square footage is for the church itself, the worship center. And those are the projects. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
When you say expandable, is it you have to do a construction later on, or can you put extra seats there?
Extra seats. There's room for extra seats, and those is overflow space. But they've all been designed so that you could expand them. You basically take out the transept and you basically enlarge it that way. But all these churches, you don't have to expand them in order to get additional seats in. You can get, in most of them, you can get anywhere from 200 to 400 additional seats because the aisles that we made on the transept side, they're wider, so you can get more seating in that, and then more seating in the back.
Right, so with the existing space, you can put...
That's correct.
Thank you.
Was it all net new space, or were there instances where you repurposed existing spaces?
This was a new church. This was a new church. 2 years later, we doubled the size of it. So it's much larger than it was in this particular photograph. But I brought this photograph because this is one where we did the church. This was their first component. Like I said, we doubled it and created a large gymnasium a couple of years later after their congregation grew. This one is a new church. It's in over there in Katy. This was a ground up. This one was an addition we did to their existing campus. We built this was basically built as a multi-purpose chapel. They already have a church. And then the gymnasium that were part of this project were all additions that we did to that particular campus. This was they had a church. It's become their parish hall now. That we kept the old church, we renovated it. So this is on campus, and this is an outdoor plaza that is run by that colonnade that you see there. This colonnade goes all the way around an outdoor plaza, and so it's all connected, and it ties in visually all together. But this was an addition we did. This is a new church. We tore down their old church because it didn't work for them, and they were limited on the amount of land they had. This is all the land they had. So we had to take the church down, and the church faced a different direction at that particular time. We reoriented the church more appropriate for the site that they're currently on. And so that was proven to be real successful. But this was a new church this is an addition to their campus. Again, their old church is now their church parish hall that we renovated. The stained glass that you see here, which is Notre Dame, came out of their old church, and it basically is a focal point of this particular, of their new church. Again, you can only get about, their seating capacity, the old church was about 500. This one was bumped up to 1,100. So that was it.
I have one more question. So
Yes.
Since you said this mention, so is it your common practice that you usually put extra space in your design?
Again, it's all going to come down to money. We think it's a prudent thing to be able to basically make aisles wider so that you can have overflow space, and we'll make every effort to do that wherever we can. Again, a lot of that's driven by budget. You know, if we can afford to do it, we will absolutely do it. Yes.
I had a question.
Yes, ma'am.
If you want some people to hear, hold it from the top.
Okay. I guess one question, just from a baseline perspective, was curious as to how much square footage we have combined currently, just to give us a baseline understanding of where we want to go.
You're talking about this church?
Yeah, our church plus maybe even our hall. If we're looking at it from a combined perspective.
Yeah. I knew those numbers at one time. I don't remember what they are now.
Maybe touch on seating capacity, what we have now versus what we're looking to do in the new chapter.
Yeah, I think what we're looking to do is we had signed up for, or requested an RFP for 8,000 square foot, 2 buildings.
Yeah, this building, right, I can tell you right now, looking at it, you're probably half of that. You're probably about 4,000 square feet.
And then I guess one additional question, since you're here, and I'm sure you've surveyed, our building space as well as our land. I think, there's a lot of desires that many of us have, which are, obviously from a worship perspective, we want more space and to be able to accommodate more congregants, but then we also have needs for parking as well. And then I think a lot of us also feel that our multi-purpose hall is severely outdated and just probably, could use just quite a bit of revamping.
Right.
From a space perspective, do you have any just high-level recommendations for us in terms of, would you recommend that we demolish the church and then build from here, or do we have enough space, in the land next door here to utilize and build a new facility? I guess just from a high-level, perspective.
Sure. I'm sure parking is an issue, and it's an issue with all churches. Because what happens is there's code required parking and there's reality. Code required parking is much more strict, it's tighter. You can get, for the city of Houston, you only need 1 parking space for every 4 people that are in a pew. And we know people don't come to usually church 4 people in a car. I'm talking about adults. So it's not enough. When we design churches, we try to shoot from anywhere from 2 to sometimes 1.5 people per pew. So again, in terms of code required parking, yes, you can get a new church on the site plus the required city parking, the city permit parking. But you're not going to be able to get anything more on that piece of property. And you're only going to, the other thing that needs to be considered is, I'm sure everybody knows after Harvey, the flooding requirements the city of Houston and the county have increased significantly. So you have to detain on your water on your property now. You can't assume that you're going to be able to use all of your property. The city and the county require that a certain percentage of that property detain water. You currently have a detention area over here. Well, under today's standards, that detention would need to be double the size that it currently is with the new restrictions because of Harvey. So those are all issues that we're going to have to be looking at as we look at this additional property. And but I can tell you that right now, you can get a worship center on that a 7,000, 8,000, or 10,000 square foot worship center on that property with the code required parking, probably a little bit more. But in terms of a new fellowship hall, your existing one is going to have to come down in order to be able to accommodate a new parish or fellowship hall, because there's not enough room to build those two components without taking something down here. You could probably do that and leave this church, possibly as a chapel in the future, something, renovation or something, but you could do that and still make it work in its current location, based on preliminary layout numbers that I've looked at. Yes, sir.
What was Julie's first question? What was your answer for that? I didn't hear it. Could you repeat the question, Julie?
I was just asking how much current square footage do we have combined for the church as well as the hall?
That's right. So what was the answer for that?
I wasn't sure. I know your worship center your parish hall is somewhere about 6,000 square feet. I would imagine this somewhere, the two combined is probably no more than 10,000 square feet. But a new worship center, the size that we're talking about, I think you're looking at more in the range of 10,000 square feet just for a new worship center. The size that would be based on the occupant that you're trying to accommodate.
So basically, the size of the hall and the church.
Correct. Is the size of what a new church would be, correct.
On the projects that you did and that you added on to, was the frame structure already established there for those few churches that you added? No. You had to tear it down and start over?
I'm sorry. Yes, a couple of them we had to tear down and start over. A couple of them we had to, if we're adding on to something, we had to tear down a portion where we were tying into. But we didn't tear down an entire building, and most of those we were adding on to what was already there. Did that answer your question?
Yes.
Any other questions?
So the question is actually for the Hutchins. In many of these designs, you see kind of a Catholic church layout where there are not two central aisles, but also a third aisle on the sides. Is there anything that would prevent us from doing something similar, or because this is the traditional layout of the churches that I've seen? I also know we need to be oriented to the east. Are there any other spiritual, church concerns that we would need to take into account for the design?
I don't think anything is prevented, but we know that the main attraction of our church is the altar and both sides that the main altar. So we should have a design like that. We have an altar on there, and we have the curtains and everything. And some of the churches we see that doesn't have that. So that's it. But contemporary or traditional, whatever we like, that's design phase. That's fine. But inside should be, we have the altar, we have the curtains and all that. In addition, that we need this relics area to keep that. Most of our churches are traditional kind of.
I have another question. So I think we're, again, happy that you're here because our perspective thus far has been just internal discussions, right? And we don't have clearly, as much instructional expertise as you have. But I guess given the things that we're trying to accomplish, right? We want a new worship center, or place of worship, so a sanctuary plus a new multi-purpose hall, if that's what we decide. As well as parking. Do you see that best, completed in more of a phased approach, or do you think that, that should be handled all at once? Do you have a recommendation on how some of these projects have taken place? Has it been more of a phased approach, or has it been, all handled at once?
Well, again, when we say some of these churches have been, had been on site for 10 or 15 years before they did the next phase. It's always, again, costs are not ever coming down. They're always going up, and we see that all the time. So if you can build it now, we have one general contractor for the entire site. It's more prudent than, build, if you can afford it. Only if you can afford it. If you can afford to build 2 buildings at one time, it's going to be more cost effective than building one and then waiting 2 or 3 years to build another one. Because first of all, general conditions. Basically, that's what a contractor charges you to be on site for the 12 months that it's going to take to build this. If he's on site one time, then he's building 2 buildings for basically one general condition. And that general conditions can be, they can range, they can be $350,000, $400,000 as part of their fee. And so, because it's their general conditions, everything inside the fence that happens during construction. So it's all of his tools, all of his, people that are working there, all of that is considered general conditions. So again, if he does it once, because he's got everybody on site, he's got all his tool he needs, he's doing it one time. If he has to build one and then come back 2 years or a year later and build a second one, then you're basically doubling the cost of that general conditions. Does that make sense? So if you can do it, if you can build 2 buildings, it's going to be more costly. Yes.
My question is actually to what Sandosh just mentioned about the church design attempt. So I typically see our church always in rectangular shape, like this one. Is that the accepted or traditional style? Do we go out of that style, or it has to be that way?
That's the traditional style. I never seen any church of ours, 2-3 rows like that. We have always having this 2 rows of seating, because maybe it's good for us, the Pentecostal service, we are, pouring the water and all that. So for the liturgical purpose and seeing the matbaha and the altar, maybe that's the way that we are,
So in here also we are talking about that same style here.
Yes.
Yes? So my question to you, Beth, I think I heard you were saying that in the new plan, we have roughly 10,000. I guess Reggie was saying the current hall and the church combined is the new space that you were talking about?
It's roughly, yes, approximately, yes. What you don't have, in a new church, I'm assuming your gathering space is going to be much larger than it is currently. Usually your gathering space is a third the size of your church. So people fellowship, they go out and they have an opportunity to talk just outside without having to go to the exterior of the church. And those, I'm assuming, again, this is all assumptions, that's what I'm assuming we're probably, and then you also maybe you'll have a cry room. Some churches have that. Maybe you'll have, an area you'll definitely have to have restrooms, and the restrooms are based on the occupant load. How many people you have in the space, and then you've got to have handicap accessibility. So all those spaces are going to be much larger than what you currently have now.
So really my question is, you saw the lay of the land.
Yes.
We roughly have 3 acres of land here.
Yes.
Given the style, the rectangular style, do you really have the space?
Yeah, I've already laid it out. I know you can fit it, because I did that whenever we were first approached, yes. I did a preliminary layout of a 10,000 square foot rectangle on that particular site to see. because I didn't want to come to you and say, well, yeah, you can do this, you know, and now we're 6 months down the road, and then I said, well, you can't do it. No, it can be done, yes. It fits on that side.
Provided you said one of the building has to come on. Right?
For a gymnasium, if you want to, I mean, it's a multi-purpose space. You know, if you want to do something other than just the church, a fellowship hall or a multi-purpose space, that's the only place to put it. It's going to have to come out.
Yeah, it's going to have to come out.
That's correct.
One last question. I know the city to double the space for the retention pond. Will y'all kind of be able to build it to where you can park cars over it?
Well, no. Well, you could do that.
Parking spaces.
Yeah, but that's very expensive because you've got to get underground tanks. I mean, we've done that on projects, but that is not a cheap. If you, and again, that's going to take a lot of your budget. And so, again, we'll look at it. We'll offer it up as an option, and we'll tell you what it costs. But I'm telling you right now, it's going to be expensive.
Thank you.
What about chapel? Chapel will be included in the design. Chapel. Asking about the chapel will be included in the design.
To be determined. We haven't really met and talked about. Other than this, we haven't talked great detail about what's needed in the new campus, our new church. I'm sure once we talk in greater detail to the building committee, because we want to get through this process before we want to hear what everybody had to say before we get into the actual design components that we're looking at. I don't know. That's something that I guess we'll be looking to you all for guidance on that.
Yeah, I would just add that the original request was for the church and multi-purpose hall. The chapel request was not included. But if that becomes a future need for us, then we do need to look into that.
If you have a new church, then possibly this church could be repurposed to be a chapel. Maybe you'd have to bring it up to current code, which means you'd have to have more restrooms and that sort of thing. But that's a possibility, I guess.
So in case of the parking space, it's usually we are parking on the ground. So any other parking facility like maybe upstairs parking or like that's economically feasible, or what do you think of it?
You're talking about a garage? A parking garage? Oh, that's very expensive. When you're looking at a parking garage, you need to accommodate roughly $10,000 per car is the way they normally do those. And parking garages they take up land, of course, but they're also they're not cheap.
It's not feasible.
No, it's really not feasible.
Just a question, when you say double the retention pond, does that mean it just needs to go deeper?
Well, that's an option.
Jack, can you repeat the questions because people can hear?
Oh, I'm sorry. The question was, she was asking if the detention that's required, if it's double, if there's a double requirement, can it go deeper? Yes, it can go deeper. The way it works is, the way your current one works is the way most of them work is that they hold the water and then it's called daylighting. They basically goes from there to a ditch. And from that ditch, then it gets into the downstream river system, and eventually goes out into the rivers, into the bayous, and then into the rivers. If you go, and you can imagine that your outfall, your ditch is here, and that's the same elevation as your detention pond. And your detention pond, maybe that. Well, if you dig deeper, then you're going to go below the outfall. So you've got to pump that water up. So you've got to add a pump to the project. And those pumps, on average, you're looking at about $100,000 for one of those pumps. That's what we typically see on all of our projects. And so it's a very good idea. It's just there's costs associated with it. So, and to answer your question, we're going to have to provide a pump simply because the new requirements are just going to be so extensive on the detention requirement that it's going to be the more feasible to try to just get a deeper ditch or a deeper detention pond and pump that water out. Yes, sir.
Yeah, can you talk about, from the end of this SD phase to breaking ground, can you kind of walk through that process real quick?
Yeah. He's asking about how long it's going to, after this phase that we're in, the discovery phase, how long it takes to create the contract documents. Those are the drawings, they call them blueprints. They go to the city and the county for permitting, and then after they issue the permit, then the contractor can start construction. For us to get the detailed drawings completed, again, it depends on how big a project it is. But anyway, you're looking at anywhere from 3 to 4 months for us to complete the drawings for that. It's not just us, we've got mechanical, electrical engineers, we've got structural engineers, we've got civil engineers who are all doing the design, and they all have certain requirements that have to be met by the different agencies having jurisdiction, the county and the city and the state of Texas. So we've got to go through a permitting process. Civil, it goes before architectural, and architectural goes before structural. So anyway, all those have to get coordinated. But that process, so it's say 4 months, 3.5 to 4 months for the detailed drawings. And then the city of Houston has a backlog. They're at least 2 months. So you're at least 6 months from whenever we finish this phase, and you say, yeah, we're ready to move forward, let's go. From that date, you need to add 6 months to the end of to complete the drawings and get the permit, and then you're looking at least a year, I think, to build. So you're talking about a year and a half before you'd be able to occupy the building. Did that answer your question? Yes, sir.
Thank you for your guidance and expertise on this. So you mentioned that there are in certain constructions you have made it like 2-story. Because I've seen it like in elsewhere where there is like restriction of like a limitation of the space. They have utilized the second story as more of a kind of a partial second story where they can accommodate the choir people, they can accommodate the young adults, and it can be an all-floor space as well. So what are your thoughts on, what is your suggestion on that?
You mean like a balcony?
Yeah, balcony or maybe more space within upstairs.
Yeah, if you can build it on one level, it's going to be cheaper. I'm telling you why. Because if you go to 2 levels, you got to have an elevator, and you got to have a minimum of 2 stairs by code, depending on it. You can't have more than 10 people on a and it can't be. It's not called a second floor. It's called a mezzanine, and that mezzanine has to be open. So it's really just a temporary. It's an area very limited people can be up on a mezzanine that the building code allows you. So it's not enough to get a large body of people up there. If you want to do that, then we've got to add an elevator and 2 stairs at a minimum. And an elevator is going to run you anywhere from $65,000 to $100,000, depending on how. And then your stairs, you've got to build 2 stairs, and you're looking at a couple $100,000 for that, probably $250,000 for those 3 components.
Thank you.
That you're not going to have necessarily on the first floor. You're not going to have those issues.
Just to avoid any confusion, with the property we have, the acres of land that we have, we can have a new church, existing church.
New church, existing church, and a multi-purpose hall.
As long as you take the one you have down.
So we can have 3 buildings on this existing property.
That's correct.
Thank you.
That's correct.
And I just want to add to that other question about the balcony. So obviously there's financial constraints and even possibly code and physical constraints, but I think the Hutchins have already highlighted to us that there's even liturgical constraints around having a balcony. So that's something internally we just have to figure out if it's feasible. So I just want to make sure everyone's aware.
Other question?
Do you mind, showing us a slide with the feedback regarding Sunday school space? Just curious how our responders reacted to that in terms of whether folks from our church feel that we need separate Sunday school rooms, or if we would just utilize our current setup, which is an open multi-purpose hall with some partitions that we can kind of set up and remove as needed. Yeah, it's the pink line in the middle.
Yeah, this one was right here. So roughly.
Two above, it's a hot pink in the middle.
Yeah, Sunday school right here. So that was the fourth one of the four priorities. It was the fourth. I just highlighted the top three. But you could see it was close to the multi-purpose hall.
So we're probably going to wrap here in a few minutes, but one thing I'll ask everyone to think about is that the survey questions were pretty much kind of, you have to mark A, B, or C, right? So there's the amount of ability you had to kind of provide your own feedback was limited. But what I would encourage you to do is over the next week or two, if you have ideas of things that you think would be really great to have in the church, share that information with the people that are on the project committee. We can, I think most of you know who all is involved. Ashley, Jesh, and I are. There's so many more members of the project committee that are there. Let the actions know what you think is important. But really, this coming Saturday meeting, mention if you think the chapel is important and we need to make sure we plan for that, then share those opinions. Or if you think that Sunday school rooms, we need to have dedicated space and having the dividers is not working well, we need to hear that. And don't just assume that, I know that Judy's going to tell them that's fine, because we also need to understand how important is it to the whole group. Because if only one or two people mention it, then it feels like a nice to have, whereas if many of you mention that this is important to you, then it elevates the importance that we need to turn that into a must-have and really make sure it's part of the foundation and plans that we do. Okay, with that, I'll just kind of open it up. Anybody have maybe one last question?
When does the design phase end?
So the question was, when does the design phase end?
So you're talking about this current phase?
Input, gathering input, and moving to design.
Yeah, good feedback. Good question. So I'll tag team with Jack, but the way we have this design currently is we need to get all inputs basically by the end of June. The sooner the better. Next Saturday is kind of like the hope that we get a majority. But as Benson said, as things are still trickling in, we need to get that sooner than later, because our goal is to have a unified, centralized, single option as we go into the general body. So we want to have that general body in third quarter. So it's really, the sooner we can get it, the better Jack's team can actually design several options for us to shoot down. But we will pick one.
You better.
Does that help?
The meeting with the architect next Saturday, agents will be supervising, because for the spiritual side, when we say this we need, that is better, but agents will be leading it too, right?
Of course, yes.
Oh, yeah.
No. Of course, by finishing the gathering all the data, I believe that Jack will, share that with us.
Share what?
The details that you are getting from the spiritual organization.
Yes,
whatever
absolutely.
it is, because it is feasible with the church, the law or what the custom.
Correct.
So, yeah, that's okay.
And Jack, maybe to that question, could you kind of articulate how you want to handle next week's session? I think we mentioned we'd start out with like a baseline of questions, and it's just really...
Yes. I will come to that meeting with a series of questions that I'll be asking you. Not high-level questions, or just more information that I can extrapolate from you about the kind of spaces that we're talking about. I will have already met with certain individuals at the church to figure out exactly, give us, me and you, a little bit better idea of what it is their vision is for these spaces. And then we'll get the detail from you all as to what's needed in there. Is it, do you need a counter with water? Do you need, how many people are going to be in, say you have a room, a conference room, how many people do you need in that room? What sort of accommodations do you need? Those are the kind of things that we're looking for. And then, the children's, then how many children, what sort of space does that need to be? Those are the kind of, and I'll bring questions with me when I come to those.
So, as Achin mentioned earlier, this is really the most important phase of this project because this is where we can get the most input and help drive the design. Because it will be much more difficult to change things in the future, right? So I think next week is a very good opportunity to provide some more input. And as mentioned, please contact any of the project committee members if you have any other input or feedback you want to provide. So with that, we'll continue to kind of stay engaged. We really appreciate Mr. Jack Duran for coming and sharing this with us today. And we're starting a relationship with him, and we want our church members to kind of meet and get to know him as well and his company. So if anyone has any other kind of questions or anything you want to ask, feel free to. You want to do it now, or can you do it afterwards?
Are we going to have another town hall meeting like this after all these data gathered?
Yes, good point. Hold on.
Yeah, so the intent is to have one more town hall. We're going to have a series of inputs coming in, and then as Jack mentioned earlier, he's going to take those inputs and help to design several options. Those options are going to be, putting you on the spot here, Jack. Those options are going to be presented in that town hall as, what do you guys like? Here's 5 options. Any pros, cons? Let's hear it. We want to hear those inputs, and then, because it's still not finalized at that time. So we want to hear all those inputs, but basically this town hall, the meetings up through mid to late June, is gathering all the inputs for the requirements, and then he's going to translate that to possibilities.
Right. So can we have a little more clear-cut idea about the square footage and the feasibility of what are the things we can do and all that, instead of guessing it, and approximate, the square footage and all we were talking about.
That's what the next town hall is going to be.
Exactly.
Yes. In the next town hall, we would have
a more precise.
No, a lot more precise visibility.
Thank you.
So it's not just we think this or that. This is the plan, or this is plan A.
Correct.
Including estimated budget.
That's right.
Thank you.
Clearly needed updated audio visual too.
Say that again?
We clearly
Yes.
needed updated. Beyond just lighting, our sound is clearly a problem.
Okay, but we will, ask some of the committee members to stick back. If anyone else has anything they want to share, please come see us after the town hall, and then, reach out anytime.
Thank you all very much.
Before we go, we'll do a short benediction prayer, and then we'll leave. Thank you again, Jack, for being here from Blue Line. Thank you, everyone else, for being here as well. Thank you to Jesh and Ashley for conducting the meeting. Just like everyone's been saying, please do give your feedback. That is important. So if you don't want to speak up here, we have all the committee options to be able to take any feedback. We'll present that at our meetings for the findings. All right? Let us close in prayer. O Holy Father, guard us by your sacred name. O Son, our God, our Savior, protect us with the victorious cross. O Holy Spirit, make us worthy temples of your holy habitations. O Lord, our God, forever, shelter us and divine means at all times, forever and ever. Amen. Body, may the love of God the Father, the grace of the begotten Son, our Lord, and our Savior Jesus Christ, and the communion of the Holy Spirit be with us all, especially the prayers of thy holy saints, especially the Mother of God, Saint Mary, our patron Saint Gregoris of Guatemala, for the future and building up of our new church building, and for the building up of this parish, for all those who are working to help that happen, especially for Jack and his team, all of our construction committee, and all of our parish members and well-wishers, both now and always and forever and ever.